So far, it's just me and you, baby.
That's okay. I'm just getting us to go live on the book.
Yeah, keep your hands off my knee.
All right, everybody, sit tight a second. We're just getting ourselves over onto Facebook as well. Then we'll be able to begin. So it's just a second.
Smile, you're on with our American, you're on with our customers that bought the package, just so you know.
Okay.
There's a little lag here for as we get onto Facebook. Then we'll be good to go. All right. Okay, looks good. Great. There we go. Right on. All right. All righty, so welcome everybody to another Paso Wine Hour. This is a special one because this one's also a kind of a partnership with Eberle Winery. You know, Gary recently won a pretty amazing award that we're going to talk about here, and so they asked that maybe we could join forces and be able to do a Paso Wine Hour that also features Gary and a tasting of some wines from Eberle, and where we can get a little bit of Gary's story as well and talk a little bit about the award and just kind of have a little one-on-one time with Gary. And I thought it was a fantastic idea. And so here we are. We're going to be talking about Gary Eberle and his new status as an American wine legend. Hey, Gary.
I kept wondering how I got this damned award. And you know what? I talked with the people, that were awarding it, and they said, "Well, you won the last 3 wet T-shirt contests you entered. You were a natural. You were a shoo-in."
They don't just give this award out to anybody.
I know you got to win. You got to win wet T-shirt contests.
You got.
I've got mine too.
But I tell you, this is a prestigious award. It is the Wine Star Award. This one here was for Paso as the Wine Region of the Year back in 2013. But Gary's is all about being an American wine legend as deemed by Wine Enthusiast magazine. So one of our treasured publications in the greater wine world. And so for this year, he was deemed this American wine legend, and that's a great honor, right, Gary?
Well, the thing that I was surprised at when I was talking about it, they have been awarding this Wine Legend Award, I think it's for 18 years, but I'm only the 4th person. They don't do it every year. It's you either have to die or do something silly. I don't know what, but all of the other awards that they give them annually. But yeah. the wine legend is like every 4 or 5 years.
And you're having kind of a banner, let's just say 12 months, 18 months here, in that you've also received a couple of other recent awards, the 2019 Robert Mondavi Hospitality Award, and then the 2015 Wine Lifetime Achievement Award by the California State Fair. These are also really big honors, and I know that Mondavi one means a lot to you.
Yeah, well, Mr. Mondavi was one of two mentors I really had, Joe Paterno and Robert Mondavi. And that one really surprised me, because normally it doesn't go to wine people, because it's a wine, food, hospitality, and it goes to primarily restaurateurs and hotel people. In fact, I think myself and Jean Charles Boisset and Gina Gallo and who's yet, but there's only 3 or 4 winemakers that have won that award. Oh, beside Mr. Mondavi, of course. And but all of these are catching me off guard. I really, I look, Jerry Lohr has won a couple of these awards, and Mr. Mondavi, of course. But I look at people, I look at people like Dick Arrowwood and Dave Ramey, Mary Edwards, Steve McGraw, people in the industry that I look at and I'm saying, man, they're wine legends. I'm just a guy down in Paso Robles making pretty damn good wine, but I will accept it. I like it. I enjoy it. I'm at that point in my life that people keep saying, why are you still at the winery every day? And it's because I get no place else to go. If I come here, they treat me nicely because, I still write the checks. But, people say, well, I've had people offer me money for my winery. In one case, I know twice what it was worth. And I'm going, and they say, take the money and run, man. You could, what you could do. And I say, yeah, but you know what I couldn't do? I couldn't sit at my winery and talk to the people who come through and be surrounded by my employees, which I consider my family. And this is what I want. And everything being equal, I will die here at the winery.
And Gary, your history here in the region is just so incredibly iconic, to be honest, because while you were out there when you started promoting Eberle Winery, Estrella at first, but then Eberle Winery, you were also talking to people about Paso Robles when they had no idea where Paso was in Texas, let alone California, maybe even thinking it was up in Napa. And so you've had a considerable amount, if anything, influence on getting the Paso Robles brand out there.
Yeah. Well, again, this is something I didn't invent. I learned this from Mr. Mondavi. I look at Robert Mondavi and, he was, and I mean this in the most complimentary sense, he was the P.T. Barnum of our industry. He was great, but he was never a winemaker. But he almost single-handedly, he promoted his winery, which he should, but equally he promoted Napa Valley, and equally he promoted California. And he sort of single-handedly drug our industry into the 21st century. And I've just tried to emulate that. I knew that, Paso Robles wasn't going to succeed. Eberle Winery wasn't going to succeed unless Paso Robles did. It was sort of a chicken or an egg type thing. And I didn't do it because I'm this altruistic guy. I'm doing it because it was something that had to be done or I wasn't going to succeed at all.
I think that was really, you kind of led that charge, but then so many others kind of fell behind you in doing the same thing and a lot of the earlier brands of Paso.
Well, you look, what theLohrs have done more than I ever did because they had, the wherewithal to do it. And Jerry Lohr's, with that whole family, Steve and Jerry, they're great people. And the Hopes, Austin Hope and Niels over at Castoro, how much he has done for Paso Robles. And I'll tell you the guy who gets sort of short shrift, and maybe he's just because he doesn't have the ego to get out in front, but Victor Hugo. I mean, he goes back, maybe not quite as far as I do, and he's a talented guy. And I think he's so often overlooked. But, now you've got, big people with big money coming into Paso, and Paso is, we're certainly not a dominant part of the wine industry, but you can go to Germany or Switzerland or France or Australia, and you say Paso Robles, and people know where it is, that it's not part of El Paso or it's something in Baja California. That Paso Robles is a legitimate, honest part of the world wine industry.
Yeah, thank you. It is, and we're right now, I think, in a really interesting point of time for Paso in seeing awards like these being given to regions and to icons and to brands in general who are also getting a lot of press and great scores or just amazing write-ups, even from kind of a lifestyle standpoint. We're in this point in time right now that Paso's getting a lot of attention, and we're kind of loving it, right?
Yeah.
Hey, I want to talk really quickly before we keep going here with story, what we're going to be doing here coming up next. We are going to show a quick video from Eberle, and then when we come back, what we'll do is start up with the tasting. I know, Gary, we've got 4 wines to walk through. Many of you out there through Eberle were able to purchase these wines in advance, or if you visited our website and clicked the link, you would have known that this was also a tasting that you could have purchased in advance. And then we'll talk about each wine. We'll talk about what its standing is in Paso, how it represents Paso, and what these wines mean to Gary as well. So let me get over to video. Gary, real quick, I want to let you know, though, that if you are answering on the chat, you need to make sure that it's clicked to all panelists and attendees and not just all panelists. That way everybody can see your comments as you're commenting. You can figure that one out while I go over and share the screen and pull this video on up.
Okay, because mine says all panelists and attendees. Okay.
There you are.
There we go. Okay.
Okay, we are optimized. Here we go. Just a quick little video, everyone.
And I suddenly realized that I really had a palate for good Bordeaux's. And I just said, you know what? I don't want to be a geneticist. I want to be an alcoholic. If Paso Robles didn't succeed, Eberle Winery wasn't going to succeed.
And we flew all over the United States promoting Paso Robles. Gary really had the vision to put Paso on the map.
I mean, here's a guy that could literally go sell wine out of his place, hit, a market or two, and then come back in time for dinner. I mean, that's like...
I show up and I go, hi, Mr. Eberle, I'm Tobin James. I'm here to work for you. He goes, who are you?
Toby and I built Eberle. I hired him at Estrella. He worked over there as a rat. The Paso appellation was the 6th in the U.S. When the food revolutions really hit, we were just poised for the perfect explosion. I was going to Penn State no matter what.
Like, whose mentors are like Joe Paterno and Robert Mondavi?
He never taught me a damn thing about making wine, but he taught me a whole lot about selling wine. I've got a spectacular winemaker in Chris Eberle. He's not here because he's Eberle. If his name was Muttalutz, I would still have him here. To this day, I have no idea why. I felt like the USS Arizona on December 7th. Several people said, man, you should sue them. You should go after them. I said, no, I've got my winery back. This is what I wanted. This is my life. I will die owning Eberle Winery because there's nothing else I want to do. I enjoy this so much.
All right. So
Wow.
great
I
video.
thought it was going to be the,
Trailer.
I thought it was going to be the film of the last wet t-shirt contest I won.
That'll be later. That's after hours. Gary, tell us a little bit about how that little trailer came about.
Well, you know, I won 2 awards, you know, going in, and this before I won this one. And people said, hey, you know, you should have, we would like to take your story and make a movie of it. And they created a 1-hour film. And it's, I mean, that's just sort of the, and I was watching it, I'm thinking, you know, because I hadn't mentioned Toby, but Toby and James Shumrick, you know, he also had a whole lot to do. I think, you know, right now, a lot of people don't recognize how much he really did for the industry, because he is sort of retired from the industry. I mean, he's still involved, but you know, it's Lance and Claire out of the winery that are really but you know, Toby had a whole lot to do with getting Paso out, but he was always a bit under my shadow. I cast a damn big shadow, and it's not just because I'm fat. And you know, I can be overpowering, and I try not to be, but it's just part of my nature.
Yeah, well, maybe it comes a little bit from the football days or something, and having to stick up for yourself. Gary, let's get into some wines. I want to tell everybody watching that we have, well, what was sent out were a few of these little collateral pieces, and of course, 750 bottles of wine. So we have a Viognier that we're going to be getting into in a second. Also sent out, really cool, was of course an Eberle wine key, a little Christmas ornament out of wood, proclaiming the legend portion. And then of course a little info card with a nice photo shoot recently done here, Gary. And
Handsome man.
yes, a handsome, cute, I think is somehow, but but I want to start talking a little bit about Viognier, because that is the first wine that we have on board here. Viognier rhymes with May. You can drink it every damn day. The lines from Paso Wine Man stuff. But a wonderful wine, 27, I'm sorry. It is the 2019. Yes, 2019.
Yeah, Viognier, I mean, you know, if you go back, you know, I used to do wine lectures, or I still do wine lectures, but I used to do a lot of them. And I used to always, you know, come up with 2 things, you know, don't let an expert tell you what you like in the way of wine. Wine is it's a beverage. You know, every American has their favorite beer, their favorite soft drink, where they know where the best steak is in their town, or the best Italian restaurant, but they feel they needed an expert to tell them what wine they liked. And that's just bullshit. It's, I mean, it's wine. You're going to rent it for 4 to 6 hours, and that's it. And if you like it, it's good wine. If you don't like it, it's not good wine. Don't be intimidated. I mean, if you try different wines, you find something you like, hey, that's good wine. If it's not, if it doesn't hit your palate right, it's not. I always say, people, drink what you like. If you invite me to dinner, please, and we're going to have steaks, please don't have white Zinfandel. But within reason. And the other rule that I had was, during my lectures, was a wine's first responsibility is to be read. And I came to California from med school down in Louisiana. I was working in genetics to make Cabernet, and Cabernet is still my wine, my grape. I've never gotten tired of it. But Eberle Winery was always a red wine house, and even to this day, we're probably still, if not three quarters or more, 75 to 80% red wine over white. But with Chris, and that's something I have to explain, Chris Eberle, spelled the same way, everything. We do not have a common relative in the United States. It's one of those fluky things that happens. He's here. He worked here first as an intern out of Cal Poly, where he got his degree. Then he went off for 6 years traveling all over the world, making wine, going back and forth across the equator, making wine twice a year, New Zealand, South Africa, Germany, France, just traveling and having fun. In 2015, I found myself in need of a winemaker, and we had kept in touch. Not close, but I mean, every now and then. He was down in Australia, down in Western Australia, and Margaret River, and I emailed him. I said, "Hey, Chris, I need a winemaker. You interested in coming back to California?" And he was here in about 10 days. And he is without a doubt. I used to say Tom Myers, who is the winemaker emeritus over at Castoro, was the best winemaker in Paso. Now he's got to share that position. In fact, I will even say at this point, Chris is the best winemaker I have seen and worked with. And I'm talking a lot of people up in Napa and Sonoma. He's been all over the world. He has made wine in some of the most prestigious wineries and regions of the world. And the big thing that he has done for Eberle is he has taken a white wine program that was, something we did because there were some people that had to have white wine. And he has converted our white wine program into something that is rivaling our reds and our Viognier. I started making Viognier in '92. We were like the 6th winery in the state to make Viognier. I've always been a proponent of Rhone varietals right after my Bordelais, my Cabernet. And it took me 5 or 6 years to learn how to make it. And then Chris came in, he has made it even better, but he has also taken our Chardonnay program, our Rhone white blend, our Côte de Robles Blanc. He has just turned them into spectacular wines. And every year for the last 4 years, he has done an Australian style sticky, a sweet white. And we don't make much of it, but he is starting a fortified Muscat Solera. He wants to make a wine like the Portuguese Setúbals, and he has started his Solera. And I would say in 5 or 6 years, you're going to start seeing a Setúbal style wine, out of a Solera system. The barrels are outside in the sun, if we ever get any. And
it's a beautiful day today.
Yeah, actually true. Yeah, we finally got a little, but I mean, we're talking through the summer. I mean, he's doing a true Iberian Peninsula style Solera. And he's really turned our whole white wine program around. And
this Viognier, that's of course part of the white wine program and our first wine today. I mean, the aromatics on it are just absolutely in your face and beautiful and floral, in the mouth, a little bit of viscosity, a little bit of wax, but just a whole lot of pear, a whole lot of these wonderful like aromatics come to life in your mouth. Was this what you were going for with him?
Yeah, well, I mean, the thing that I find so, in fact, you just hit on a bunch of it, but the thing that I find so special about Viognier, and I think somewhere along the line, it's going to become, this could replace Chardonnay as the white wine of choice, but it's got that stone fruit character, peach, apricot, maybe a little bit of a honeysuckle on the nose, and it's got a real high viscosity without, I mean, you could put a couple of drops of red food dye into a glass and you could almost think that you were drinking a light red. It's got that kind of body. And it's the only white wine, to this day, I swear to God, it's the only white wine I drink. And I actually go to the Viognier to take my Advil in the morning about 11 o'clock. But, and Chris says, and Viognier, it took so long when we came out, because it's spelled Viognier, and a typical American looking at that, they go, Viognier, yeah, I'll have the Chardonnay, because most Americans would rather eat a bucket of mare than mispronounce a fresh wine name.
Yeah.
And but it is so good. It is so good that Americans have learned to love it. They learned how to pronounce it, and it is no longer. I used to say, Viognier suffered from the Gewürztraminer problem, and that nobody could pronounce it or whatever. But this was so good that people had to learn because they just love it.
What do you think about Viognier as it's grown here in Paso? We have a question about how if it grows well in the heat or does it need cooler weather?
No, I think Viognier is again, the Rhone varietals do well. They need some heat, and Viognier. In fact, I think Viognier probably more so than some of even the red Rhone varietals. It ripens late. It needs that little extra shot of sun at the end to bring up that real stone fruit character. Mm-hmm. And I can't think of any. Everybody thinks that Paso Robles is this horrible hot growing region. And they say, well, Napa is they take the weather data down at the hospital, the Lady of the Valley or whatever hospital. You go north of Rutherford, Napa is much hotter than Paso Robles. I've spent a lot of time in Calistoga in the summer, and you couldn't stand it. I mean, it was just hideous, and it doesn't cool off at night. Paso, even when we get hot during the day, our nighttime temperatures, we plummet 45 degrees in the summer almost routinely. 50 degrees is not uncommon. Yeah. And it makes a big difference because we've got cold nights, and there are varieties like Cabernet, warm, the sunny Syrahs, Viognier, Zinfandel, Barbera, that just love Paso Robles. There are varieties like Pinot Noir, Chenin Blanc, even Sauvignon Blanc that are not all that happy, and Nebbiolo, not that happy with Paso Robles.
You got to find the right spot for that.
You betcha.
To grow those around here. And remember, everybody, we have 11 different AVAs. There's a lot of different mesoclimates that are here. There's 30 different parent soil series that exist here. Of course, so much of it is going to be like the sandy loam, clay loam, calcareous types of soils that are going to be these majorities. But this particular Viognier, I'm guessing it's from over, is it over in the Steinbeck Vineyard?
No, this is actually, because it's 53% Mill Road, which is the Steinbeck Vineyard, but that vineyard was part of it in the partnership, and that was sold, and then we got Four Lantern, but we now are taking Viognier. We planted on the estate, we now have 9 acres
Oh,
of
wow.
Viognier. And starting, actually this year, you'll start to see estate or Eberle Vineyard. It won't be a estate because it'll still be a blend, but in the future, you're going to see an estate bottled Viognier.
That's great.
It was just, I did not want to be in a situation where I ever lost my best fruit.
Yeah.
And that's our Cabernet, Viognier. The Syrah comes, from Steinbeck. Howie, I mean, I planted that vineyard in 1980. And
that one's across the road from you where Eberle is. It's basically just a little south of your location.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then the Four Lanterns stuff, that's basically over in the kind of Willow Creek / Templeton Gap area. So if you're going out Highway 46, and you might know where that Hart Hill is, those oak trees kind of shaped like a heart, it would be directly south of that vineyard.
Yeah, because of the buy. I mean, Justin bought that vineyard, and they, I mean, I can't blame the guys. When they sold, because they got a really good price for it, because we had won so many gold medals with that Mill Road Viognier, and that's why I wanted to be in a position where, because I had always counted on being able to, have those grapes into the future. So that's why we have Viognier growing, and we took our first crop off of it last year, or this year, 2020. And we're going to, I would say, not necessarily this crush, but by next crush, all of our Viognier will be at Eberle Estate.
That's great.
You drinking some Syrah?
Syrah, yeah. Let's move on to Syrah. For everybody out there, I mean, so many people in the wine industry consider Gary as kind of being this kind of vanguard of the Rhone varieties when it came to bringing and introducing Syrah plantings into California. Gary, share a little bit of that story if you could.
Okay, well, it's not just Syrah. I mean, like I said, I was I think the 6th person to make Viognier, Rhone varietal. I was the first person to do Counoise, another Rhone varietal. And when I was at UC Davis, one of the other graduate students was Brian Crozier, who was out of Australia. He'd been the assistant winemaker at Hardy's. He came to Davis to get his master's, and he brought with him a bunch of Hardy's Shiraz. Those convicts never learned how to spell. And nobody was real. I mean, none of us. I mean, I'm talking, Mary Edwards and Steve McRosty and Dave Whitehouse. We really weren't interested. It was kind of a curiosity, but there was no Syrah in the United States. And I went to Doc Olmo after I started realizing it's pretty nice wine. I said, "Why isn't there Syrah?" He said, "It's one of those fluky things. It just was. It was the one variety that sort of fell in the crack, and nobody did anything with it." So I set out. I said, "Well, hey, I like it." Doc Olmo helped me get some wood that he had gotten from Mac Chapoutier in the town of Tain on the east side of the Rhone River. And they've got that big sign, M. Chapoutier. And most people have seen it, like the Hollywood sign, big white sign up on the hill. That's where this wood came from. And in 1975, well, I got the wood in 73, and I took it to Doug Meter in Greenfield. Before Doug Meter had the Ventana Vineyard, he had December Pacific Nursery. He was growing, grapes for people. And I took a handful of sticks. I said, "I want to plant 20 acres of this next year." He said, "It'll take me 2 years to get to propagate," because he had to grow them up to cuttings, you know how they do it. But in 1975, I planted 20 acres of Syrah the first 100% virus-free, clean Syrah in the United States, not just in Paso Robles, not in California, but in the United States. And for 10, 15 years, I was the only source of Syrah. I sent wood to Washington, all over California. Bob Lindquist, Steve Edmonds, I mean, everybody, I mean, Virginia, Arizona, people were coming, all the nurseries. So for years, the only Syrah was this, and I would say conservatively, 65% of all of the Syrah grown in the United States is still this clone, the Chapoutier clone. And
Is it still considered the Chapoutier clone though, Gary, even though you've kind of propagated it over and over?
I don't know how else to come. Some people call it the Estrella clone. Some people call it the Eberle clone. I'm just telling you, the original wood came out of the Chapoutier vineyards in France. I don't know how else to, say it. Hey, that's Gary Eberle's clone. I need some more accolades. I mean, I don't get enough attention. Let's,
Yeah.
And this,
Let's talk about the wine.
Yeah, this is
Let's talk about the wine a little.
This the Steinbeck Vineyard. This is a vineyard planted in '80. It is now the second oldest continuously planted Syrah vineyard in the U.S. The vineyards that I planted at Estrella, and I planted over a couple of years. Every year we planted some. And then in '78, when Marsh Ream built Zaca Mesa Winery, and Ken Brown was the winemaker, newly hired winemaker, and Jim Clendenin and Alan Tolmack and Bob Lindquist were the cellar rats there. I planted the 6 acres that is the Bear Vineyard, which is because of the way the vineyards were ripped out, whatever. That vineyard at Zaca Mesa is the oldest continuously planted vineyard. I planted it in '78 in the United States, and the Steinbeck is now the second oldest. So, and this is 100% Steinbeck. It is, and people say, describe Syrah. Cabernet, you've got that black cherry, cassis nose. Zinfandel is raspberry. Grenache is strawberry. The Viognier is honeysuckle and peaches and apricots. What's Syrah? And I say, well, Syrah, I always say Syrah is blueberries and blood. And it's because the fruit, and it's, I think, a little bit more pronounced in the warmer climate, but it's both. In the cooler climate, this clone of Syrah does a sort of a black peppery character that is kind of neat. In the warmer climate, you get more of the blueberry, but in both cases, underlying the nose, there's a component that I say it reminds me of a good plate of carpaccio, a good piece of sirloin, not bloody, not gamey, but that sweet, beefy character. And I mean, to me, Syrah and carpaccio is one of those. I don't have many wine food combos that I really love, and that's one of them. So I refer to Syrah as blueberries and blood, and I genuinely love this grape.
Yeah, and this wine, for everybody watching, if you have it at home right now, I'm guessing you're loving it just about as much as I am, because it is so incredibly kind of fulfilling and warm and round in the mouth, and it feels like something comforting in winter, and yet it has this bright acidity that is so electric, and it really kind of makes this wine be just so alive. Love these cards, by the way, because on here on pairings it says lamb shanks, bacon wrapped dates, aged cheese, Gouda with cured meats, barbecue pork shoulder seasoned with pepper and cumin. I mean, I pretty much stopped at bacon. I don't even need to wrap it on anything.
It is, I hate to say this because, I mean, Cabernet is my one. I think Syrah is probably the most versatile red wine that we're doing. It goes with beef. It goes with just, I mean, pork, with lamb, with just about anything. Even I've had this Syrah and salmon, and it was good. Although I'd prefer Barbera, but that's a different story. But you know, if you've got a glass, if you're out there now and you're watching this and you've got a glass, put your nose in there and think, you know, because blueberry does, you know, and blueberry has a distinctive character, but it's not something that jumps out of the glass and hits you between the eye like raspberries and Zinfandel or strawberries and Grenache. You got to think a little bit about blueberry, but along with that, see if you don't get that real sweet, beefy character, not bloody, but just that beefy character that you get from Syrah.
Yeah, Syrah is such a fun grape that exists in our region because so many people grow it, so many people actually make wine with it. It probably represents nearly 10% of what is actually grown in the Paso Robles wine region. And so you find it as a standalone, but you also find it in so many different blends.
But it's funny, you know, because I mean, the first Syrah, the first Counoise, which is also another Rhone varietal, early, I mean, I was very high on Rhone varietals, and as a group, I think the Rhone varietals were always favorites, but you know, always, I still think Cabernet is Paso Robles' best grape. I just can't see anything but besides replacing Cab, but you know, I promoted and pushed the Rhone varietals early on. Ooh, Cabernet. Now we're talking wine.
I need to tell everybody, every time I go over to Eberle to visit with Gary or whatever it might be that I'm doing, let's say he's sitting outside, because he literally does sit right outside the door, everybody, or inside when we can, and all of that good stuff. There's a bottle of Cabernet sitting next to Gary, and he is sipping on it. He's sharing it with other people in the industry, close friends of his, whoever it might be, but it's no joke. Cab's his favorite.
Yeah, and I'll tell you what, you know, it's funny that, you know, the sitting outside, when I first started it, you know, and I sit there in the shade right at the front door, just under the overhang, and I greet people, and I learned that from Mr. Mondavi. Something he used to do, and that's how it started. But there is nothing in my life that I enjoy more than sitting out, greeting people, meeting people, talking about wine. I am at this winery 7 days a week. Unless there's some horrendous football games on in the fall that I must watch, including Penn State or the Steelers, I am at the winery. And even if they're playing, I always get away for a couple hours, but I will be at this winery in the afternoon. If I'm not out front and you come to my winery, it's because there's something really serious going on, and maybe something like this. I mean, this is cutting into my fun time where I'm sitting out front talking to people. I love it. Just like Mr. Mondavi, it's just, you know, if you take all of the people in the United States, and Americans are really fair people, God, I love them, and you put all the Americans into a bell curve, big old curve, and you split it down the middle. You know, for the most part, the police have to deal from the middle down. In our industry, we deal from the middle up. I meet the most interesting people. people with stories to tell. I mean, interesting stuff from all over the country, from all over the world, from Japan and Australia and Germany and Italy and Alabama and Florida and New York. God, it's almost like getting a college education every day. It's just fun. And I always feel sorry for people, all of us have met people and they say, oh boy, I'm going to retire in 3 years, 2 months and 6 days. I'm going, I can't imagine that. I can't imagine. How can you, if that's what you're looking forward to, you're in the wrong business. I've been very fortunate. I'm in the perfect business for me, for my personality, and I love it. I love the interacting with people. I love my wine. I love my dogs. In fact,
It's a great business. There they are. Yeah, right back there. It's a great business in that it is a relationship business. We talk so much about that on this show every week. That's kind of what we feature. Obviously, this week a little special with featuring Gary and his wines. But oftentimes, what we talk about for at least the Paso wine region is not only the fact that the wine industry is such a relationship based business, but it's also there's a sense of camaraderie that exists within this and the people that like to enjoy it together. This cab, Gary, it's fantastic. It's Cabernet. You put your nose in that glass, that's Cabernet Sauvignon.
It jumps out at when I was at Davis, I was doing my doctorate at Davis in fermentation science. The professors had us take the major varieties, Cabernet, Chardonnay, Pinot Noir, Zinfandel, and they said, okay, we want you to, took a couple months. You find the wine in each of those categories that you liked, that it really hit the right spot on you, and that becomes, and they would critique them, but that would become your reference wine. And my reference wine for Cabernet was the 68 BV Private Reserve. This is George Latour's daughter. The grapes come from the Madame de Pin's vineyard, who was George Latour's daughter, and all of the BV Private Reserve. And this is when Dick Peterson and Andrei Chelichev were a winemaker, assistant winemaker, and making these wines. And it just is, and that was the wood that I brought down, and I planted the Estrella, the Steinbeck, the Eberle, Kenny Volks at Wild Horse, so many of the vineyards in Paso Robles, that was the wood. And it's a shy producing clone. There are clones of Cabernet that produce much bigger, but these clones, it's a tiny berry, a very loose cluster. A typical Zinfandel cluster weighs about a pound. A typical Cabernet cluster from this clone goes about a seventh of a pound. Takes 7 clusters to make a pound. So when the harvesters, and we do everything by hand, when the harvesters are doing Zinfandel, they want to be paid by the ton. When they're doing Cabernet, they get paid by the hour, because it takes, to get a pound with the Zinfandel, it's 1 cut. To get a pound with Cabernet, it's 7 cuts. Mm-hmm. And those guys are smart. Hey, Zinfandel, we want to work by the ton. Cabernet, and it's funny, when they go through a Zinfandel vineyard, they go through it like almost like a wildfire. They hit the Cabernet and you think, my God, they all went to sleep. It is so slow, but it's a real small berry. It's essentially a piece of skin wrapped around 4 seeds. Well, when we make Zinfandel, if we don't get 63 gallons finished wine per ton of fruit, we've screwed up. When we do Cabernet, if we get 59, we've done an outstanding job. I mean, it's just
1 barrel.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, holy cow. But it's a soft, you take it in your mouth, you get that cassis black cherry character.
Mhm.
Take it in your mouth, and so you can feel the tannins that they're on the roof of your mouth, and yet it's not bitter. It's got good fruit. It lasts, and when we do our Cabernet, you know, people ask, well, can Paso Robles Cabernets age? Another thing I learned from Mr. Mondavi, he said, you build yourself a library and you don't have to keep Zinfandel or Chardonnay, but you keep your Cabernets. And I have every Cabernet I've ever made. That's the first wine to ever have a Paso Robles appellation.
That's right.
1980
I
cab.
got to enjoy this with you one evening at dinner, and I kept the bottle because it is the first wine
First Paso Robles
I
wine.
ever have, the Paso AVA. So
Yep. Before that, we used San Luis Obispo, the county appellation, but I waited to print the labels until, because I was part of the appellation, I mean,
the committee, yeah.
printing of, but anyway, but I'll tell you what, Paso Cabs, this wine, from 76, if you had somebody that was born in 76 or a birthday in 79, 80, 85, 87, I have them. I have every
And he does too.
every Cabernet since 1976. The 76s, I think I'm down to like 6 bottles, but every vintage, and they are still, I mean, we just had yesterday, we had a bottle of the 90. Chris raids my cellar on Wine Wednesdays.
Not me, Chris Eberle, the winemaker.
Yes, Chris Eberle, the winemaker.
I've never been
He
invited,
came
by
to
the
my
way, but
house.
that's all right.
He goes down and he brings up 3 or 4 bottles, and we've got a group of people that come up, and we did the 90, but we've done 70, 77 Estrella, all of these different wines. Paso Cabernet, it's well balanced. If you put it in the bottle balanced, it will age. If you age it properly, you can't age it, you know, in a hallway closet. You need to be able to age it properly. But I'll tell you what, with rare exceptions, and I won't tell you which ones, but there's probably only about 3 vintages of Cabernet that even though they're still drinkable, I look at them and I say that, you know, those are cooking wines. But,
they were just vintages that you don't appreciate as much as the others.
yes, yeah. But for the most part, I'm talking 90+% of the Paso Robles Cabernets, and I don't mean if it's me, my wines, you know, Vic Roberts, when he was out of Creston Manor, made some great Cabernets that are still aging beautifully. I still have them down in my cellar. You know, some of the early stuff that Austin Hope did, unbelievable. The stuff that that Tommy Myers did at Castoro, outstanding. I mean, there were, you know, so many, and now you've got wineries like, well, besides Hope, you got Halter Ranch, you've got Dow, you got Opolo. I mean, Niner. You got people that are Adelaide that are doing spectacular wines, and their Cabernets. You know, you can appreciate all of the other stuff that they're doing, but if you really care, because I'm sorry, Cabernet is the benchmark. I mean, that's the one you look at to see how good a winery really is doing. And you follow, and these are all guys out at El Pomar. I mean, there are just so many lore. You know, dollar for dollar, you cannot buy better Cabernet than what's being produced at Lore. It scares me because I have to compete against them, and they are making, and nobody nobody in the industry makes as consistent a high quality Cabernet than Lohr on volume that they do. And it's like, holy cow. And the prices are right. It's just, but it's not Lohr, it's not Eberle, it's not Opolo, it's not Halter. It's Paso Robles Cabernet.
Yeah. This environment for growing cab is exceptional. There are a lot of diverse soils that it's grown in every single one of the 11 AVAs.
Mhm.
It also represents 50% of what is actually grown in Paso. So if you think of 41,000 vineyard acres, 50% of that is dedicated to Cabernet Sauvignon. There's a reason for that.
Yeah. You know, when I was at Davis and I made these 3 trips down when the soil science department and the viticulture department were doing an analysis of the coastal counties looking for the next great red wine producing region, because that's where it was when I was at Davis. Paso Robles, Dr. Amarine, Dr. Omo, Dr. Alley, Dr. Kunke. This, because we've got high calcareous soils. You know, everyone says, well, you know, it's limestone. It's not limestone. We don't have enough limestone to make, you know, 2 bags of Portland cement. But a grapevine cannot take limestone. It does not. Limestone is calcium carbonate. The key is the calcium. And all the white rocks you see, they're calcium silicates. And the vine takes up calcium. And we have some of the highest, richest calcium soils in the United States. It is just, you know, it's
So for
great.
everybody watching too, for the difference between this stuff versus limestone, which would be this stuff, is basically the calcite that's in it and also the amount of dolomite that exists, all the minerals. So there needs to be a higher representation of those minerals. While it gets close because it's still sedimentary, so it's still sea bottom, it's not exactly there. Is there some? There is some, but
Yeah.
mostly.
But the calcium carbonate really is a firmer soil, and it doesn't break down nearly as easy as the calcium silicates. So the calcium in the soil, in our soils, which is what you're looking for, because that's what the grapevine cannot take up anything except in the ionic form, the calcium ion. And our soils are, the whole appellation, it's not just part of it, the whole appellation is so calcium rich, and it is so important, and the health and the way our vines react to the soils and the climate.
Absolutely. And it's great for cab. I love, by the way, the description. And before we move on to the next wine, I love the pairings on this one too, because now I'm really hungry. Barbecued ribeye with a gorgonzola sauce, which I really want somebody to make that for me, please. Braised short ribs with a red wine sauce. Absolutely. Herb and cheese stuffed portobello mushroom. Here we go. Doing something a little veganish. An umami burger also with Gruyere and mushrooms, and then steak bites with truffle fries. That's basically saying find some French fries, get the steak that you had left over, cook it up, eat it.
Yeah. I tell you what, I mean, Cabernet is my grape, my wine. I don't think it's quite as versatile as Syrah. I don't think it pairs with quite the range of food that the Syrah does. But I'll tell you what, in my opinion, I drink Cabernet. That's what I brush my teeth with in the morning. It is just, it's so, and the other thing about Cabernet is it's sort of the thinking man's wine. If you pour a glass of Zinfandel and you come back to it in 15 minutes, it's raspberries. You come back in a half an hour, it's raspberries. You come back in 45 minutes, it's raspberries.
Mm-hmm.
Cabernet, you pour a glass, you smell it, You set it down for 15 minutes, come back, it's slightly different. You come back in a half an hour, it's significantly different. Cabernet there is so much going on in wines like Cabernet, more so than any other grape that I've ever experienced.
And even in the amount of time that we've been talking, and the wine that's been in my glass, it has changed, you know, with almost this interesting parabola of being very fruit forward. And then it exhibits some of those herbal notes that sometimes Cabernet likes to do. And then it comes right back around, and it had that really deep kind of cassis to it that it's almost smoky and earthy.
Let me show everybody a trick. You know, they say, okay, Cabernet, get a good bottle of Cabernet. Doesn't have to be Eberle, but I mean, it's works especially well with Eberle. Pour this much out of it or less. I mean, just so that there's some headspace in there. Take the bottle, put your thumb over it, shake it like that, pour it into the glass, and you get a glass of wine right out of the bottle, and a glass of wine out of the bottle, shaken up and oxygenated. Now, to do this with don't do this with an old vine, do it with the young vine. And you want to see and you don't need one of these expensive aerators. Your thumb works great, even better. And you can right now, you can see about 45 minutes of aging in that wine right now. Just that shaking it up, the oxygen, boom, 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 and the wine will be smoother. I mean, you have this glass and this glass. They've both been poured 3 minutes ago, and they are this far apart. And I mean, it's amazing.
And you also get to see basically what a lot of 80s shtick exercise equipment was, how it was used as well when you do that move.
Yeah.
So, let's move on to let's move on to the Muscat.
The Muskrat. Yeah, the 19 Canelli. Oh, geez, I almost had an accident. I got mine too. Muscat Canelli is the 3 wines that I have made every year since I've been in the business. Cabernet, Chardonnay. I shouldn't say Cabernet. I only made Cabernet in '76, but from '77 on, I always made Cabernet, Chardonnay, and Muscat Canelli. And the reason was my wife loved Muscat Canelli. Robert Mondavi's Moscato d'Oro, Martini's Moscato Amabile, Charles Cruz Muscat Canelli. So I made Muscat. Didn't make a lot of it, but and I still, if you tasted my Muscat Canelli today, and you go back and you could taste a Robert Mondavi Moscato d'Oro from 1975, you couldn't tell them apart. I mean, it is the closest thing to a formula wine that we ever do. The wine is typically 10 to 11% alcohol, typically around 5% residual sugar. It's stopped fermentation. We don't sweeten it. We stop the fermentation so that the sugar that's in there is the grape juice. And it is low alcohol, high sugar, and you can drink an entire bottle of this wine and still legally drive yourself to the hospital for an insulin shot. It's, I always say a bottle of my Muscat Canelli and a hot tub is instant family. Be very careful who you get in the hot tub with a bottle of my Muscat. It is high in the terpenes, that little character. I mean, there is no wine anywhere that has the, if you get a bottle, a reason, it doesn't even have to be well made, but reasonably well made Muscat, and if you can't recognize it just on the nose, your nasal,
They're
you
not.
know, yeah, it's
Well, I love this card because you do hit it right on the head. I think a lot of typicity that exists with Muscat is going to be guava, is going to be ripe peaches. It's going like summer ripe peaches. Think fresh, ripe off the tree. They're still warm. I've had those before recently. It was amazing, and it made me think of this particular wine. I love that you chose to include this wine because this is actually one of my most favorite wines that you guys produce. It is such a fun and lively wine, but why last, Gary? Why last in the tasting?
just be only, it either has to be first or last because of the sugar. And I look at it and I'm going, with the acid and everything, it probably is going to show better after the Cabernet than before the Syrah or before the Viognier even. It's, I'm not a great fan of wine and food pairings. I think we overdo it. There are some like Viognier and sea scallops or shrimp, unbelievable. Cabernet and a good steak, unbelievable. But let me give you another one. This is one of the best wine. You want to be the master of a dinner party. Get some young goat cheese, some Syrah, and put it on a neutral cracker, something like a Carr's water cracker. Just put some on, just nothing else, just goat cheese, that crumbly goat cheese. And you serve that with a bottle of Muscat Canelli, and everybody will look at you like, oh my God, because the acid, you could not drink that. The Muscat Canelli that we make, and this is Chris, you could not drink it if it didn't have that much sugar. The acid is so high, it will crack your teeth without the buffering. And the acid takes that goat cheese and it turns it into creme, sweet creme fraiche in your mouth. It is one of the most, in fact, I will go back. I will say it is the most spectacular wine food combination I've ever experienced in my life. And I've experienced it dozens of times. Goat cheese and Muscat Canelli, that sweet, high acid wine. It is, and once you discover it, it is the easiest, simplest hors d'oeuvre or, appetizer when you're sitting around, people coming, gathering for dinner or whatever. Just get some water crackers, the kind of ones you would put fish eggs on, and just.
Because everybody has those in their pantry.
And it's, and serve it with the Muscat, and people will just look at you like, oh, I've just met Bacchus. Or you must be the reincarnation of Julia Child. I mean, it is so great. But again, it's white, and it's this is still it, baby.
Yep. And so these four wines that you chose to showcase, of course, are some of those staples out there at Eberle. But you've mentioned Barbera, which actually is also one of my favorite wines. Was the featured wine at my wedding, as well as so many other brands. What's next? What's new for you? You said that Chris has got some Solera thing happening, but I mean, is there something now that with Chris on board that has inspired maybe you to want to have something made that's new and different?
Well, this is, we were just talking about this yesterday. you know, because Chris always does these kind of crazy things. And when I was at Estrella back in the 70s, we had a block, about a 1 acre block of vines, 18 vines of like 48 different varieties. And I had Tom Myers and Kurt Lorenzi. I'd hired 2 assistant winemakers. And turned out Tom was the better winemaker, Kurt was a better marketing guy, and we worked it that way. But they had their job with the people picking them was to make wine from all these different things in carboys. We just wanted to see what they were. And we had, you know, like 7 different clones of Pinot Noir and everything. The one grape that came out of there that just every year for 4 or 5 years blew us away was Semillon. I was talking with Chris and I said, nobody does Semillon. You couldn't sell, I mean, no one could sell it. I said, and we're going to, we're talking with some, we're gonna get 4 or 5 acres of Semillon, and we're gonna make a varietal Semillon. And because, you know, Semillon, when it's done well, it's like opening up a jar of preserved figs. It just has that real figgy character. And it's a nice wine. I think it's so much nicer than Sauvignon Blanc. And it loves Paso Robles. It loves Paso Robles much more than Sauvignon Blanc. So I would think that you're going to see, in a couple of years in the future, you're going to see a Semillon. And I don't know what form it's really going to take, because I'm not the winemaker. Chris is the winemaker, but I'm not going to dictate, say, you've got to do this. But I think he's kind of enthused about it. And I think it's a very good movement into the future. We're not going to make a lot of it until we see what the market is. But, you know, people that know wine, and you take a good Semillon, like the ones that they used to get out at at Wente in the 70s, and some of the, where you get that real figgy character. It's just too good not to take advantage of. We're probably going to continue to grow our Barbera program a little bit.
That's great.
I think Barbera is the one Italian grape I think we do better than the Italians. Because, you know, in the Piedmont, you know, Barbera is the red-headed stepchild of the grapes. You know, it was Nebbiolo, Nebbiolo, because you know, Nebbiolo comes from the Latin nebbia, means from the fog, and that's great for Nebbiolo, but the Barbera is not. That's not its place. Paso Robles is where Barbera really does. Paso and up in the foothills too. There's some great Barberas up in the foothills, and that's where we compete with. But
Gary,
anyway, that's where we're going. Any questions?
yeah, I think we've actually tried to incorporate the questions as they've come through from both Facebook and from Zoom as I see them, and then sometimes you actually just end up answering them as they come. So it looks like we've done pretty well with that. But if anybody does have any questions, please do type them in here quickly, and we'll do our best to get to them. Gary,
somebody just said that from Erie. You know, when I was a kid, we had a restaurant at Conneaut Lake, and if they're from Erie, they know Conneaut Lake. We had a restaurant just outside the park, and I spent the most hideous 18 years of my life working in that damn restaurant while everyone else was out water skiing and swimming. But anyway, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, that's great. Please do talk to them, and if they've commented, please respond. We've had a lot of comments congratulating you, of course, and of course we've had a lot of viewers that are actually some of the regular viewers, like Steve and Martha Hewitt. Of course, I saw them check in at some point from cold Columbus, and I know I've seen a few many people that the list goes back there. So it's really tiny writing, so I'm not really actually able to read them right now. But we've enjoyed this, and thank you, Gary. This has been really, really interesting and a lot of fun to go through these wines with you. I understand you guys, and much of Paso for that matter, is open again, open for outdoor tastings, of course, appointment only. Gary, you've got that deck out there that's been expanded. I don't know if you want to talk a little bit about that.
We expanded the deck. We spent a lot of money building new decks, buying heaters, and then they shut us down. We couldn't even do outside tasting. But you're getting ready to shut me off, go away?
I am, yes. Actually.
Okay, but before you go,
But not forever.
You have to hear my dog sing.
Oh boy. So before we hear the dog sing,
My dog, I've always had black standard poodles, and they sing.
yes, as we go out with the dog singing, I want to say, Gary, congratulations once again on your award. The Wine Star Award is an amazing thing to accomplish. All of your other accolades. Thank you for sharing your wines. And thank you for being you. Oh, Gary.
My dogs think they're operatic singers. That's the
Clearly.
introduction to Cavaleria. You know, there's some music. You know, another one, they sing to the music to Law and Order. I'll be at home, I'm watching an old Law and Order, and there's like 8 pieces of music that just sets them off. That's nothing, and I don't let them drink.
Good. That's a good thing, because somebody needs to get you home some days. Gary, thank you again. I know that we'll be seeing you soon. Be sure to call Eberle Winery in advance to make your reservation, of course. Say hi to Gary sitting out front. Gary, I'll probably see you in your hot tub one of these days soon.
Okay, hey, you won't get pregnant, but I tell you,
Well, I hope not.
thank you
Thanks.
guys.
Join us
for
next week
showing
for
up.
another Paso Wine Hour, where we're going to be talking about late ripening varieties. So right here on this same channel, 3 p.m., we've got 3 brands talking about Mourvedre, Pouilly Blanc, and Cabernet Franc, all really fun varieties. Gary?
I just want to say, as I sign off, the one thing you need to do is get your money back from all that money you spent on Rogaine.
Thanks, Gary. I will take your advice. It clearly worked for you as well. So bye, everyone. Thanks.